I heard someone whisper my name, but I couldn't really tell where it was coming from. I was a bit creeped out, but I tried to ignore it and carry on playing my game. Then I heard the voice for a second time, and it sounded exactly like my sister. The problem is, I knew my sister wasn't home. To hear the rest of this poor little girl's hellish experience, watch this video until the end. I'm your host, Severed Soul. These events occurred in 2007. My sister and future brother-in-law had just had my nephew and moved into a new rental home. The home itself was very old and was located in a historic part of town. I was asked to babysit for my nephew one evening. My sister and brother-in-law wanted their first evening out since having him, so I duly obliged. I arrived at their home and my sister went over a few details. She mentioned that she had a load of baby clothes in the dryer and asked that if I had time would I take them out and fold them. They left to enjoy their evening, and 30 minutes later the dryer was beeping to let me know that it had finished its cycle. I scooped my nephew up in my arms and placed him in his crib. I went to the laundry room, took the clothes out of the dryer and started folding them. I then placed all the clothes in a basket, took the basket into the nursery and placed the basket on the changing table. Then I took my nephew out of his crib and put him in the bassinet in the living room. I was watching TV quietly for a while. That was until I heard a really loud bang coming from the nursery, the room that I'd left the washing basket in. I peeked into the bassinet and my nephew was still sound asleep, so I made my way over to the nursery to see what the noise was and quietly opened the door. The laundry basket that I had placed on the changing table was now upside down on the other side of the room, and all of the clothes that I'd folded were thrown all over the place. I quickly picked the basket up along with the clothes and took them in the living room to refold them. I was confused by the whole situation, but I really didn't want to ruin my sister and brother-in-law's evening, so I kept the incident to myself. The rest of the evening went pretty smoothly. A few months went by, and once again my sister asked me to babysit for my nephew. I agreed, and this time my mother was joining my sister and brother-in-law as they were going to a casino. My nephew had been sleeping prior to their departure, and my sister told me that when he wakes up, he'll need feeding. Approximately 30 minutes after they left, my nephew woke up from his sleep. I scooped him up out of his crib, took him into the kitchen, placed him in his high chair. I then began to prepare his bottle of milk. Before I go into what happened next, my name is Angelina, but everyone calls me Angie. The only person that ever calls me Angelina is my mother, and that's when I'm in trouble, or if she's really angry with me. All in all, it's very rare to hear my full name being used. Suddenly, I heard my mother yelling angrily from what sounded like the nursery.
Angelina, come here, now.
I yelled out, "Just a second, I'm in the middle of making the baby's bottle." Then again, I heard my mum call out,
Angelina, come here, now.
only this time, she sounded like she was in the master bedroom. Frustrated and confused, I yelled back, "What's going on? Wait 1 second." I picked up my nephew and started walking towards the master bedroom, talking to what I assumed was my mother. I was asking, "What's going on? Why are you so upset? What's happened?" Then, I walked into an empty room. I looked around, and my mother was nowhere to be seen in that master bedroom. Then, I looked in the nursery, which of course was empty too. I looked through the rest of the home, guest bedroom, bathroom and garage. My mother wasn't in the house. I even checked the driveway to see if there was any other cars on the drive, but the only car on the drive was mine. I came back inside the house and called my mum on the phone. I said, "Hi, did you guys forget something and come back?" My mum answered, sounding very confused. She said, "No, why?" To which I responded, "I just heard you in the house not long ago. You sounded really upset." She responded, "I really don't know what you're talking about. We've been on the road for over 30 minutes now." My stomach immediately sank. Again, I didn't want to ruin their evening, so I just said that maybe it was the television, even though I knew that the TV had been off all night. Immediately after I hung up the phone, the doorbell rang. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest and I walked to the front door. I almost opened the door without checking, thinking that maybe my mum was pulling a prank and she was going to be at the front door. There was absolutely nobody outside. I opened the door to peek outside to see if there was any other cars on the drive, but again, my car was the only car out there. I was overwhelmed with a sense of dread. There was absolutely nobody outside, and from where that house was situated, you could clearly see down the street in both directions. I never mentioned any of these incidents to my sister until she moved out of that rental house. As I was helping her move, I noticed that she'd moved my nephew's crib into the master bedroom. I asked her why she'd moved his crib into her bedroom, thinking maybe he'd been having sleep issues or something. What she told me was completely unexpected. She said around Halloween she bought a black light and plugged it in the nursery. The room instantly lit up with what she described as a huge concentrated stain in the middle of the room and handprints up the walls. Understandably, this made her feel very uncomfortable and quite concerned. She moved his crib into her bedroom that night. I told her what had happened on the 2 occasions that I'd babysat for my nephew. She started to open up that strange things had been happening in that house, and this was the main reason for them moving. He was experiencing lights flickering in the home. The doorbell would ring and there'd be no one there, and she started to hear disembodied voices at night. He said the landlord had offered to lower the rent if they signed a year's lease. Apparently, the landlord had been having problems getting anyone to stay in that house, and she was the tenant that had been there the longest. They politely declined the offer and moved out soon after. I always wondered what had happened in that home and wished that I'd investigated the history further. It really sends chills down my spine to think that whatever was in that house was mimicking my mother's voice. Have you ever experienced anything like this? I couldn't think of a better place to post this story than Reddit. Last night, while I was watching TV in my bedroom, my mum randomly shouted, "What did you say, son?" I explained to her that I hadn't said a thing. Then again, a few minutes later, she said, "Josh, did you just call me?" Again, I hadn't said anything. I didn't really think too much of it until this morning. My mum had something playing on the TV in her bedroom, and I could hear it from my room. It sounded like Jerry Springer, so I yelled, "Hey, Mum, what are they talking about on TV?" I got a clear response.
If you want to hear it, come in here and watch it.
The show really caught my attention. It was a funny episode. I kept listening, and then said while laughing, "Oh my God, what did he just say?" This time, my mum sounded really irritated and shouted,
I'm trying to watch this. If you want to hear it, come in here and watch it.
I got out of bed and slowly made my way over to her bedroom to watch it. I started talking to my mum as I entered the room, only to notice that she was fast asleep and snoring. Clearly, she'd been asleep for a while, so I woke her up. She said, "Bloody hell, Josh, why did you wake me up? What time is it?" After I told her what I heard, she told me that she hadn't been watching TV, and the TV wasn't even on when she fell asleep, and she'd been asleep for a while. She then proceeded to tell me that the previous night she kept hearing me calling her name, and that's why she was asking me what I wanted. The voice I heard clearly sounded exactly like my mum, and she said the voice that she was hearing was undoubtedly mine. To say I'm a little bit freaked out would be the understatement of the century. I really don't know what to make of this. Do you have any idea what's going on? I'm 41 years old now, but when I was about 3 years old, me, my mother, my stepfather and my sister all moved into a rental house in a nice neighbourhood in our town. The house had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it was way bigger than our previous home. However, even though I finally had my own bedroom, me and my sister continued to share a bedroom and share a bed. I think we both felt a bit uncomfortable in the new home, and my mum felt like we'd both shared a bed for that long, we just felt comfortable that way, and eventually we'd grow out of it. There were 3 significant incidents that happened while we lived in that house, the third of which will haunt me forever. The first incident occurred when I was about 4 years old. We had a small sliding door to the attic. It was situated in the bathroom, just above the bathroom door. I was sitting on the toilet doing my business when I heard what sounded like 3 faint knocks on the attic door. This in itself wasn't terrifying, but it certainly grabbed my attention. However, then there were 3 much louder, more audible knocks. By this point, I was very scared indeed. I quickly wrapped up my business and made my way towards the bathroom door. Just as I reached the bathroom door, the sliding door to the attic slid open on its own. I didn't hang around for long enough to look up into that dark void. When I told my mum what had happened, she played it down and said that it was probably just raccoons. But I know that those knocks were intentional. The second incident occurred when I was playing outside on the patio. I heard someone whisper my name, but I couldn't really tell where it was coming from. I was a bit creeped out, but I tried my best to ignore it and carried on playing my game. After a few minutes, I heard it call my name again. Only this time it was louder, and it sounded exactly like my sister. The problem was, I knew my sister wasn't home. This time, I knew exactly where the voice was coming from. We had an old wooden shed situated at the other end of the patio. That is where the voice was coming from. The door to the shed was cracked open just slightly, so I cautiously and apprehensively slowly approached the shed and opened the door. Part of me was thinking that maybe my sister had come home without me realising, and she was just playing a game with me. But as I opened that door, I realised that there was absolutely nobody in there. It was just full of old gardening tools. Yet, I know exactly what I heard. I closed the shed door and ran back into the house. The final incident occurred when I was around 5 or 6 years old, and my sister would have been around 9 or 10. The way our bedroom was set up was, our bed was situated in the far corner against the wall. My sister slept close to the inside of the wall, and I slept on the outside. We had an oscillating fan against the far wall that was aimed directly at our feet. Just outside our bedroom door was the hallway with the bathroom opposite. One night, my sister woke up in the middle of the night, desperate to use the bathroom. For some reason, I woke up too, and had the urge to look down towards my feet. Standing there, at the foot of the bed, closest to my side, was a dark silhouette with a profile very similar to that of my sister. I couldn't make out any distinct facial features, because it was just a dark void of a silhouette, and it was standing perfectly still, staring at me. I could see the fan rotating behind her, but not a hair on her head moved out of place. I quietly called my sister's name and got no response. Then I called her name for a second time. Again, no response and no movement. When I looked out into the hallway, I could see that the bathroom door was closed, but I could tell that the bathroom light was on through the small crack underneath the door. When I looked back towards that figure, it now seemed to be inching slowly closer to me. She was moving slowly, but she wasn't actually moving. It was like she was slowly gliding across the floor, closer and closer to me. I was frozen stiff, absolutely petrified with fear. As soon as the bathroom door opened, the figure disappeared, and my sister walked into our bedroom. I remember I was absolutely terrified, and I refused to ever be alone in that bedroom again. We moved out soon after this, and I've never experienced anything of a paranormal nature ever since. There was something very wrong with that house. Well, that wraps things up for today. I really hope those stories give you nightmares. If you have any thoughts on this video and the stories featured, please leave them in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for a feast of grim and grisly content. Thanks for watching. I'm your host,
Severed Soul.